I think we're gonna get started. So I'm just gonna firstly introduce myself. Thank you, everybody that's joined the call. I'm gonna ask, and everybody pretty much, except for Vicky, I think, who may have unmuted herself, we're gonna ask everybody to mute themselves for now so that we don't have any interference. And I'm gonna just go through a litany of information. Some of you who I know well and have sat in on some of these presentations in the past when we were doing the water referendum, a lot of this is going to be repetitive, and some of you already know a lot of this information. But for the benefit of people who don't, I wanted to kind of give you the full gamut of what we're talking about. So if you're on this call, I'm just going to make sure you're in the right class, and like you would start when you start in college. This is meant to be for people who received a notice that they were being considered to be part of the proposed water assessment district that the village is looking at potentially starting. The council will be deliberating on that specifically next Tuesday at their May 11th meeting. And in the notice that you received, it'll give you the instructions on how you can watch the meeting or participate. You can either participate virtually or in person. And I can go over that towards the end of the presentation if there's any questions on that particular meeting. If you're on the call and you received a letter from Durham or Miami-Dade County telling you that you had to connect to the existing water line, this is not the right forum for you, because we're not going to be discussing people that already have access to water. This is really meant to be for people that currently do not have access to water. Okay. So let me get started. Firstly, just want to give you a quick rundown of the history of water infrastructure in Pinecrest. To the best of my knowledge, I can tell you that water infrastructure in the village has come about in different ways. A large swath of infrastructure came in as a result of contamination that occurred back in 1992 or 91, right before Hurricane Andrew. That occurred because of the Sunnyland dry cleaner. So the county in that area came in and built a bunch of water infrastructure to bring safe potable water to that area that was affected by the contaminants from the dry cleaner. The county, in a general sense, typically does not build new infrastructure. New infrastructure and the burden of building new infrastructure, or what they call expanding infrastructure to areas that currently do not have, usually fall on private development. In the case of Pinecrest, because we're not built like Lennar communities, it's mostly already built out. So it gets infilled when people buy a home, a property that's a certain distance from an existing line. And then if they build something big enough and it falls within a feasible distance, they're required to build that infrastructure in order to build, to be able to construct whatever house they may want to do or whatever building they may want to do. The construction in those private cases where the development or the developer or the property owner is required to build infrastructure can cost anywhere, tens of thousands of dollars, as much as $100,000 in some cases. So depending on each property, it's different. So the history, again, part of it was built through contamination that the county came in and just built infrastructure. Part of it's been through private development. And then when the village incorporated, what was left over, hi June, what was left over was about 1,500 properties that at that time, when we incorporated, did not have access to potable water. So in 2004, the county issued a general obligation bond, and they provided some funding back then towards water infrastructure. That amount of money was ultimately put to use and built what we call the backbone of the water system, mainly lines that went down the major thoroughfares, but not into the more residential areas. So fast forward from 2007 and 8, which is when all that was constructed, to today, we're left with approximately 725 properties that currently do not have access to county potable water, to that infrastructure. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to jump around a little bit, but I just want to make sure that you all understand for the 20 years or 25 years that we've incorporated, since the incorporation, the village has been trying to deal with this lack of infrastructure, and trying to find funding sources that are not necessarily coming straight from the village to pay for the infrastructure. And unfortunately, when the recession hit in 2007, all those earmarks that used to happen at the federal level kind of dried up. And since then, all our lobbying efforts every year just went dry, and we weren't getting any kind of funding that we could potentially use in large amounts, enough to pay for a huge project like this. The water infrastructure that's left over right now, we're talking about a project that's going to cost $11.4 million to complete. So we know this because we actually put out a bid last June to get a sense of what that project would cost in today's terms, because we were applying for multiple grants at the federal level and at the state level, and trying to find the funding to pay for the entire project. So fast forward, in March, the feds passed what is called the American Rescue Plan. And as part of that American Rescue Plan, there's a fund that they refer to as the Coronavirus Relief Fund, that specifically sets aside an allocation for different cities based on a formula that's based on population. And that fund has allocated roughly $8 million towards the village that could be used for specific purposes, a limited number of purposes, including water infrastructure. So because we knew what the going rate for in today's costs, based on that bid we did in June, the council is considering utilizing about $7 million of that $8 million allocation towards water infrastructure, and then passing on the cost of the balance of the project to the properties that would benefit from the water infrastructure, the new water infrastructure, through a special assessment. Okay. That doesn't mean that the village is done with trying to find additional sources of funding. In fact, we've reached out to our Congresswoman Salazar, who has agreed to try to help us with community project, like earmarks that are seemingly coming back online at the federal level. There's a bill that's in the works that's called an infrastructure bill that's also at the federal level. So we might be able to, through these other funding mechanisms, be able to come up with the shortfall that right now we're looking at the 3.9. That's what we're trying to look to pass on through a special assessment. But again, if we're successful in finding other funding sources, then that balance pass on to the affected property owners will obviously be decreased. So in a nutshell, the assessment and what we're looking at right now is worst case scenario would be a annual assessment in the amount of $358.97 for the next 25 years. So every year, the affected properties will be assessed that amount or less. It could be less, but not more. And that's what's been what will be considered by the village council and discussed at the public hearing that's going to happen on next Tuesday. Let me just see what else. As far as construction, so let's assume that the village council hears the public hearing and agrees to go ahead and move forward with the scenario where they're going to contribute $7 million the Corona Relief Fund and pass the rest on to the affected property owners. Construction would begin likely sometime in August. The project will be have to go through a permitting process at the county. And then depending on how the county reviews, the project as a whole is split up in like different districts just to break up the project from a construction standpoint. So those plans will all be submitted to the county. And then as the county reviews the plans and issues permits for the different areas, we'll start construction. There'll be multiple crews working at the same time. So we'll likely have at the minimum 2 different crews, maybe up to 4 going on at the same time. And the anticipated timeline for completion of the project, the contractor says 9 months, we're giving it about a year, because there's always rainy day and things that you never, it's construction. So figure that it'll be between 9 months and a year, starting in August, that we would start construction for all this infrastructure to be installed. Now, what does that mean as far as people having to connect or not having to connect to water? I know there's a lot of concern. Some people really like having their the wells and are not necessarily interested in connecting. The county code is what dictates when people have to connect to existing infrastructure. And the code technically reads that one has to connect within a year of a line being constructed in front of a home. In the case of Pinecrest, back in 2004, when we were going to build that portion that we built, we went on behalf of all 1,500 homes at the time that did not have access to water and successfully lobbied and received a variance from a board, which is the one that makes the decisions on variances when it comes to variances to that particular code for connecting to water lines. It's called the EQCB board, and we successfully obtained a 10-year variance. So what that means today is once a line is built, by the village would come in, build the line, that line, they test it, the county tests it, they inspect it, and then they make it go live. When they make it go live with water, that line is conveyed to the county, and the county now becomes the owner of the infrastructure. The village is not the utility, the county is. They provide water and they maintain the systems, okay? And that's when the 10-year clock starts. I can tell you that because there has been a lot of input from community members that don't necessarily want to ever connect to the existing or the new infrastructure, that there's been discussions with Commissioner Regalado, who is our new commissioner here in Pinecrest, and she is working to try to obtain a further variance that would allow 20 years before people actually have to hook up. She's going to be reporting on her efforts at the council meeting on Tuesday as well. So she'll give us an update on that. I know that's more behind the scenes. I don't know that any action's actually been taken, but I know that that's something that she's going to be putting her efforts towards. But with what we know today, just based, nothing new that might happen in the future, what we know as of today, from the moment we convey the water infrastructure to the county, the clock would start ticking on those folks, and they would be given 10 years to connect. So from a technical aspect, I just want to mention that what the village builds and what you would be paying for towards with the special assessment, if the council goes forward in that with that direction, is for what's known as the force main, which is like, think of like the spine that comes down the asphalt down the road, and then what they call a lateral, which is like a rib. And that lateral connection has the meter box at the end, and that meter box gets installed in your swale area right in front of your home. That's the extent of what the village's construction project entails. In order for a property, a homeowner, to then obtain water to their home, the property owner has to pay for the service line connection that actually brings water from that meter box to the property, to the actual structure. And that connection, which is all like PVC pipe, that whole thing is done through plumbers, a private plumber. And every house is different because depending on whether you have to cut through a driveway or go under the driveway or, you know, around a tree, or however far your service connection to that home is, that may dictate what the ultimate cost for that plumber is to bring water from the meter box to the actual house. But that cost is borne by the individual property owner. That's not paid for by the village as part of this construction project. And like I said, it's different for every home, but you can, on average, that cost should be somewhere between $2,500 and $5,000. Huge properties may cost more than that. It's just, it's a linear footage issue. If you have to make your way around a certain way, it may cost you more. And in some cases, your connection to your house may be super close to where that meter box is. And when we're actually putting the lines in, we'll be talking to the residents, and we can make adjustments to kind of help that with the location of that lateral connection, so it's beneficial to you. The actual assessment will not be on your tax roll if this were all to pass until the 2023 tax roll. So between now and the time that we have to submit the final tax roll to the property tax collector at the county, we will be allowing people to pay with interest-free the cost of this. So if you know, the numbers that we're using are all based on an interest rate of about 2.67%. This is like a regular bank loan, a 25-year bank loan. If interest rates come in lower than that, then that benefits the, you know, it'll lower the cost obviously to everybody. But so these are estimates, because until such time as we actually pull the loan out, we won't get the final interest rates. But right now, based on that as being the amount that we're using for the calculations, the prepayment, the one-time prepayment would be about $5,555. So my suggestion, and this is just giving my thoughts on this, if you plan to live in your house for 25 years or more, it makes sense. If you're not, then you're better off just paying the annual fee, because if you're going to sell your house, then it'll just, that assessment just carries on by the new homeowner. So those are things for you to think about, is just how long you're planning on staying in your home and whether or not financially it makes sense for you to go ahead and do that one-time payment or not. Let me see if there's anything else that, as far as, oh, I had some questions, just for general purposes on our website, and I'll show you real quick. I'll share screen so you can see. Let me see, of course I didn't do this. Hold on, let me 1 second. Let me just pull this up. Here it is. Okay. On our website, there is this is our home page of our website. If you go on our home page for Pinecrest and you just scroll down, you'll see this little segment here that's called Water Project. You can click on that, and everything you want to know that I've said, all the backup information of how we got here, all the town hall meeting stuff, frequently asked questions, it's all here. So you can easily come back in here and read up, and we'll also provide a copy of this meeting on here, a video copy of that. So you can always go back and listen to what we've discussed here if you have any questions, lingering questions or things that you don't remember. Concerns about water quality, I just want to mention a couple of things. So we just received, and it'll be published on that website, the village in 2018 installed monitoring wells throughout the village to monitor water quality of our wells. Every location has 3 different monitoring wells at different depths, and we just had those wells retested. And we're definitely seeing saltwater intrusion occurring in the easternmost monitoring well, which is located just outside of Pinecrest Gardens. So we are definitely seeing some issues already at the lower depths where there is saltwater intrusion occurring. So the concern obviously is that you can have failures of the wells. There's definitely been a worsening over the last 4 years since we last tested those wells. Aside from that, there are concerns. The county put out a report regarding the failing septic systems. As you may know, Pinecrest, the majority of Pinecrest is on septic systems. So what happens from to those facilities in general is we can have intermittent septic system failures depending on issues of like groundwater levels, if they're too high because of sea level rise or a lot of rain that happens, anything that affects the ability of the septic system to function the way it's meant to function will result in potentially intermittent failures of septic systems. So what does that mean? That means when septic systems are intermittently failing, excuse my French, poopy water is obviously not being filtered the way it should. And so there's always the chance that when there's a lot of rain event that you could have some unknown contamination of your drinking water. And anecdotally speaking, we know that this is happening in different parts of the village. People, and I can say this because I live not in the village, but in Broward County on a well. And for 30 years that I've lived in this house, I've never tested my well. And so I don't know how often people actually test their wells, but we know that there's intermittent septic system failures happening. It's documented by DERM. And we know anecdotally, we've had cases in Pinecrest where somebody's come in because they had blue water and they didn't know why they had blue water. And it turns out that their neighbor was using that toilet cleaner in their systems, and that's how it was leaching into their well drinking water. So we know that this is happening. The monitoring wells and that report that we'll be putting on that website has also located another well that is showing contamination of nitrates at a higher level than what it was 4 years ago. So all these things are affecting our well system, and those are the concerns. Not to mention what Paul was mentioning, the fire hydrant issue. So for those reasons, the village is always, and the council's always felt that this was a priority. The difficulty has always been in how to pay for such an expensive infrastructure project. And so this is, at this point, I think they're viewing the windfall of this money from the feds as something that they can parlay and finally try to get the cost down enough where it's feasible for people and that they can go ahead and build the infrastructure. So I think I've covered everything on my list. I'm gonna just ask whoever's on staff to remind me if there's anything I need to cover that I haven't covered already. And then I'll open it up to questions and answers. If there's anyone on staff that wants to tell me if I don't hear anything, then I think I've covered everything. So, okay, moving forward, let's, what I'm going to suggest we do is, for those of you that want me to see you in person, go ahead and turn on your video cameras so I can see your faces. And if you've never used Zoom before, there's a button on the bottom where you can raise your hand, and you can click on that and I'll call on you and ask questions, and I'll try to answer all your questions. Or you can just raise them like this and I'll just go through the screen. I don't think, how many, we only have 16 participants right now. So as long as you have patience with me, I can go through all of the stuff. So I'll start with a bunch of questions. Do you want them all at once or round robin? We can, I think it's better if you have a bunch of questions, just ask me, because some of the questions you have might answer somebody else's questions. So go ahead and I'll take my time to go through everybody. So I'm going to call on Sherry, then Lance, then Paul, and I'll go down the line and just ask everybody out, just go through. Okay, Sherry, what questions did you have?
Well, one was, and I thought you were going to say it when you were talking about the prepayment option.
Prepayment option.
When, being that if there's an assessment, it won't start till the 24 report. When would the prepayment option, when would you need to make that payment?
So once the council decides if they vote to go forward with this, then we will be putting out the notices to folks, and people will have about a year to a year and a half time frame to be able to do that prepayment. We just need to get that prepayment in. Is that Kyle? I haven't seen her in ages. Say hi, Kyle, to Lance, to your mom. We will try to give as much ahead of time for people to give at least a year, if not a year and a half, for them to be able to submit that payment. But it'll be a one-time window that people will have to take advantage of. They won't be able to, once we start the assessments, to be able to be taken off that roll. And by the way, the more people pay that way, that can potentially have a positive impact on the rest of the folks when we go out to take out the loan for the remainder of the cost of the construction project.
Okay, and just to confirm, you mentioned that, you know, because a lot of times all this comes down to is money,
right?
And the concern about the cost to connect. Right. And in looking at all the projects around the village, sometimes a line, you get access, but it's very unfavorable to connecting because it's very expensive, because the developer just went one over, but you got to go all the way around the property. So you're right. Saying we can have some input on where that is to help defer that cost?
So this is the issue. Yeah, we can work on something where we try to connect, you know, where we do the lateral connection near the home service, where your well kind of comes in. What we can look at that. So people that already have water, like when private development comes in and does water lines, they don't provide for that lateral connection. And what ends up happening is when those people have to connect to water lines that are already pressurized, it's much more expensive and complicated than just building the lines with the lateral already. It just facilitates it. But all the projects the village has ever done, and this one would be the same, we would already provide the lateral connection to the property. And so we can definitely work on trying to locate it so that it works the best way possible with the house service line location. Because we have that wiggle room in the design.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Kyle, how are you? Hi, Pat.
Fine. Yeah, she can see you in the background there.
Yeah, I haven't seen her in ages. What's up?
Okay, so I have a few questions about the environmental, some of the environmental aspects that you mentioned earlier. Firstly, the test well where they saw the saltwater intrusion, is that the one that's near the Snapper Creek Canal?
Correct. It's the one right outside of Pinecrest Gardens.
And that's the one and Snapper Creek Canal is of course brackish, or it does contain salt water since it has access to the ocean?
Right. So when these wells, there's different, at the deeper levels of wells, like there's 70-foot wells, like 30-foot wells, there's different levels of wells. And back in 2018, we already knew that there was some saltwater intrusion at the very deep well levels, but not at potable water levels. And the report that we'll put out for you all to look at will, what it's showing is that level of salt that exists in those monitoring wells has increased to levels that are coming closer to potable water levels. And so the fear, and based on discussions that I've had with the director of Durham, Mr. Hefty, what they've kind of explained in layman's terms is that, you know, there's a salinity line that kind of is held there based on, you know, the pressures that are kept on the canal systems to make sure that you don't get, you know, the saltwater intrusion and that line, you know, from shifting. The issue is like if you have a lot of drought 2 years worth of drought in a row or something like that, that's unforeseen. Any one of these little things can cause a shift of that salinity line. And, like what happened in Fort Lauderdale, where they had, a lot of wells that just went bad, in a fairly short period of time. So there's always that threat that can happen potentially. And they're not able to tell us, they can't forecast and say, we know for a fact it'll happen within 5 years. What we can know based on the report I just told you, is that there's definitely a worsening of the issue, especially on the eastmost monitoring well.
Did you say that report was going to be posted on the website?
It'll be posted. We just got it today. So if it's not posted by tonight, it'll be there tomorrow, because it will be part of the agenda packet that council will receive. So it'll definitely be put up for people to be able to review, and we've shared it with Durham. So what I anticipate will happen is Durham will start coming out and doing like private well monitoring. Sometimes they'll come out and then just check around in those areas just to see what other private wells are showing, just to make sure that we don't have a problem that we're not aware of at this.
Okay, next question. The septic tank well, water well septic tank cross contamination, has any of that been documented, or is it all anecdotal?
No, we have, we do have instances in Pinecrest where we have found that the state does intermittent testing throughout the village. So it's not just anecdotal. We do get reports from the state. Sometimes, what the state does is they try to find the cheapest solution to these contamination issues. And if they can just plop like a filter on a home, that's good enough for them. What we also know is a lot of our wells in Pinecrest were never permitted. Like they were built back in, the 50s, 60s, and they were never permitted. So we don't even know the locations of every single well that exists in Pinecrest and the relation of that well to like the neighbor's septic system, or even your own property's septic systems. So especially the older homes, those kinds of areas where you have a lot of the older homes, we don't know exactly where these facilities exist. And so that's part of the issue of concern, that there might be some intermittent contamination when there's failures of septic systems in the area.
Okay, lastly, the hydrant issue, the water hydrant issue. Do you know off the top of your head what the current count is on hydrants?
Yeah, the count in the plans that would affect this area is I want to say it's 191 fire hydrants that would be a part of this project.
Oh, no, currently how many we have?
Currently, let me ask staff who's ever on the call if they can go into the water referendum page. I think that there's a map in there that tells us the number. If somebody can check for me, and we'll get back to you, Mr. Kyle, with that answer.
So it's probably around 100, or?
I don't know the answer to that question. I know that those facilities have hydrants. But I couldn't tell you how many are there already, but I'm sure there's a map somewhere on our website. We'll just have staff check, and then I'm sure they'll either text me or put something in the chat function. I'll get back with the answer to you.
And it's one of your outside engineering firms that makes recommendations on how many we need, or is it the fire department, or?
It's both. So the engineering company uses the county code as, when they get into design, but then they have to go through permitting. We go through permitting at the county. So the county reviews those construction documents, and then they, basically sign off on the number of proposed hydrants, or if they are going to require additional hydrants, whatever, they're the ones that are going to come in and tell us the final infrastructure, what it's going to look like. But right now, as it's proposed and designed, it's only providing for about 191 hydrants.
Okay, thank you so much, Yossi. That's all of my questions.
You're welcome. Okay, Sherry, I see your hand up again, or I'm just gonna go down and ask people like this. No? Okay, so make sure you take your hand, your raising hand down. Paul, did you have any questions? Go ahead.
Okay, I got a bunch, okay, so
No problem.
be patient with me. So, so the first one is on these wells that, because I've been part of this conversation for a long time. I went out before, okay, so I actually petitioned the council to actually test the wells. And I was told at the time that you guys just don't test the wells.
Right.
So I'm kind of just, wow, it's interesting that you guys have tested the well. So first question is, what did you test the well for besides salt water? Any chemicals?
They did. They tested for a litany of things, and that was one of the other things I was going to mention. The eastmost well, monitoring well, in the report you'll see where there's different locations throughout the village. We tried to do it from west to east just to kind of monitor what's happening with the water in the aquifer. The eastmost well, which is near Pinecrest Gardens, we had saltwater intrusion, and then there's another cluster of wells where they found nitrates, high levels of nitrate. So we have to do more research as far as like why that's happening. But there are naturally occurring contaminants that are known to ultimately contaminate different wells. You can have dealdrin, you can have nitrates. Yeah, nitrates are poop. Yes, Mike. You can have arsenic, some things that are naturally occurring in the ground that over
Mercury as well,
time
natural.
can make its way down into the aquifer. And the other thing that can happen is, that Sunnyland plume contaminants from the cleaners.
Yep.
That plume moves over time. It doesn't stay. So over time, that plume is moving in a southeasterly way.
Mhm.
And so, Durham and the state come in and they do their own monitoring and their own well testing. They do sometimes private well testing as well. The village did these monitoring wells 4 years ago purposely to just keep an eye on the situation of the saltwater intrusion for the well system.
Okay, good. And so by going on the public water, that's going to guarantee us to stop the saltwater intrusion?
No, saltwater intrusion can still happen. In fact, a lot of people, let's say that they connect, well, it'll stop the saltwater intrusion from affecting your drinking water and your ability to have healthy potable water. But like some people would like potentially to keep their sprinkler systems on well and not run that through the county water, so it's not as expensive, and you can do that. But if the well systems become brackish or have salt water, you obviously will have to abandon those wells because you'll ruin your landscaping. So, there is no way of knowing, like, these wells can fail and fail wholesale, and we will never have the ability to have potable well systems. That can happen. We just don't know when and to what extent that would happen. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So my working with solid waste, they'd use injection wells, right? So they filter water and they inject it back into the aquifer.
Warm water.
Right? And that kind of holds back the salt water, so it's not just drinking water and our wells, it's the fact that they have to pump water in and keep pushing that out. So really,
right. There's a whole hydraulic system, and it pushes. The way that it works is the fresh water is what keeps the salt water from intruding. If you don't keep that head pressure good enough on that back end, then you can have a shift literally overnight where you have wholesale failures of your wells. That can happen. It's happened in Fort Lauderdale. And in fact, when you look at the saltwater line down the coast, when you get to like the power plant, the salinity line is way west, and it's almost like 3 miles in, and it's because of what's happening with the FPL's impact on the water, because they use so much water out of the aquifer. So all these different things and variables can impact where that line stays. And just the function is the majority of the houses that currently don't have infrastructure happen to be mostly in clusters on the most part of Pinecrest.
Sure. And so the trend in Pinecrest is a lot of the trend is, not all of it, but most of it is, at least around me, is dividing properties in half. So they're building large houses, they're still keeping their septic tank. And so is that, you know, so you talk about putting water in, but if you're still dumping your septic tank into the ground, does that, what about doing, you know, sewer?
Okay. So the cost of doing sanitary sewer for the entire village, because the majority of village does not have sanitary sewer, is upwards of $100 million.
Right.
The county has identified the sanitary sewer issue as a priority because the sanitary sewer failures is having an impact on the nitrates that get released into Biscayne Bay, which then in turn, and this gets very technical, can kill off the seaweed and you can have fish kill and basically ruin our economy in South Florida. So the county is putting, and the state for that matter, is putting a huge priority on sanitary sewer systems. So the village has already reached out to the county mayor and county commission staff to see if we can parlay, and while these infrastructures going into these areas, if the county wants to use some of the monies that are portioned through their coronavirus relief fund allocations towards sanitary sewer, it would be a lot cheaper and more efficient to build both infrastructure at the same time. But the county, you know, works at a different pace. I don't know what to tell you. We've put it out there. It would be the smart thing for them to do, to parlay and use, you know, the available monies in the most efficient way and beneficial way to our taxpayers. But, you know, it's a tall order. We'll see. I know that they're aware of our projects and that, and obviously in a perfect world, they would come in and partner with us and we would try to bring those additional infrastructure to the residents when we tear up the roads.
Okay, so those are all my environmental, but I get now to the other parts.
Okay.
So I know that Mr. Kyle mentioned so this is an infrastructure project, right? So, right, so infrastructure usually benefits everyone, is that right?
The infrastructure, in order to do a special assessment, we have to do a report that shows what the benefit is. And so the benefit from for the purposes of implementing a special assessment is borne by people who would gain the access to water.
So is putting fire hydrants a public benefit, or is it the property owner's benefit?
It's both. It has a general public benefit,
Right.
but obviously the people that live closest to the fire hydrants are put, like, I think it's 500 feet apart. So
Right.
the people immediately adjacent to that are the ones that benefit the most from it.
So if Pinecrest decides that I need a sidewalk in my front yard, am I going to pay for that? Is that a public benefit? I mean, obviously I'm going to benefit from the most that's in my front yard, right?
So I see your question. Okay, so Pinecrest is not the utility. And so the water is a completely different animal because we are not the utility. For example, we have stormwater utility. We are responsible for stormwater utility. So everybody gets charged a stormwater utility fee across the village. And then we might build a project that only affects one neighborhood and not everybody. But that's because we're the utility. For whatever reason, the county's structure for building infrastructure and their policies since they became, you know, an entity is that expansion to infrastructure is borne by private development. And so they will not use existing ratepayers fees like they collect from the sale of water or sanitary sewers to pay for infrastructure expansion projects, which is why For 25 years, we've been fighting and trying to get them to finish the infrastructure, and we never get anywhere. So I hope that answers your question.
It means that the county won't pay for it. I understand that. So, but I'm still kind of stuck on, so when you're talking about the person who benefits it the most, and this is a kind of a sarcastic part now, and I apologize. I don't mean
Rhetorical question, right?
Rhetorical statement or whatever it's going to be.
Right.
So there's a property not far from me that that Pinecrest is buying. This is the Moreno, is that right? The Moreno house, right? The
Oh, Palermo, that we bought that,
Palermo.
we already bought it. We already bought the master property, yeah.
How much was that?
3.75.
Almost 4 million, which is almost the price of what the difference would be. That's 7 to 11, right?
Right, okay, so the council, I don't know if you recall.
I was there.
On the water referendum that went, okay, so in 2018, the village council put out what's called the water referendum vote, which put the question to the people of the village, whether they would be willing to tax themselves an ad valorem amount that in essence was going to be, represent $25 a property, let's say for argument's sake, to finish this water infrastructure, and that referendum failed. So what that basically told the elected officials is that people that have water were not willing to tax themselves to build infrastructure that they would not benefit from. And so that added to that decision to not throw in tax money that's being paid for by the majority of the residents in Pinecrest. But with that said, the council has identified a huge chunk of money that's a grant that they could potentially use for other projects, but they're going to be allocating, or it's their intent to allocate a large portion of that towards this project. So, it's a windfall. Like that was not anything we even foresaw 2 months ago happening. So it just fell in our laps, and it's just worked in our favor. And I think I'm still hopeful that this other infrastructure bill that they're playing around with in the federal government, that might actually get us the remainder of the money to finish the project at no cost to the affected property owners.
So you were going back to your statement about how it affects everyone. So the Palermo property is near me, and I may take my dog there, but I don't know if someone in 136 on the edge over there is going to bring their dog to the Palermo property to walk them. So I'm trying to make the point of, if it's infrastructure, and water is infrastructure, I'm not saying hooking up to people's properties. I totally agree with you on that. That is the responsibility of the homeowner. But if you're going to run a fire hydrant down a street, I think that is infrastructure that should be shared by everyone, the cost of everyone on that. So I definitely want to be on the record for that. That to me, and for people in Pinecrest, some have sidewalks. I think I just complained the other day that where I live, I run every morning. I almost get hit by cars every morning.
Yeah.
I don't have a sidewalk, and I try to run only on sidewalks. But I'm trying to say that infrastructure is something that everyone should pay for. And I don't, I understand that you're trying to follow Miami-Dade County and say, you're not a utility, but although I pay a big chunk of taxes to Pinecrest, and I'm happy. I mean, I love you guys.
County, and I guess my point, not to be argumentative, is that because we don't own this infrastructure, we'll never maintain it, we'll never operate this infrastructure. Literally what we are is a construction management company on behalf of the county. We build it and we turn it over, and it's theirs. And so I agree with your argument, but that argument, quite frankly, if you can, make it to our commissioner, maybe she can help locate funding from the county coffers to finish paying for this infrastructure, because we're basically gifting this to the county. So feel free to contact your county commissioner and all the other commissioners and try to get them to put in some money to finish paying for this infrastructure, which is their infrastructure. It will be theirs. It's not ours. We don't maintain it. We don't operate it.
But it benefits the people of Pinecrest. You just said that.
And they make money off of it. Because when they start selling, they're going to be making money off of it. And so, that's the distinction. The village provides police services, we provide park services, we provide sidewalks. That's all ours. We own it, we operate it, we maintain it. The water, we're just facilitating construction to move this along, because if we wait on them, it'll never happen, you know, so that's where we're at. Okay, Vicky, I know you've had your hand up for a while, so.
I do have more. We can come back to me.
Oh,
after.
I'm sorry, Paul, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
here my, I'll go through them quickly. So, we talked about how many total homes in Pinecrest?
6,000 odd homes. I can get you the actual number if somebody from
6,000.
staff can look at that. It's on our
Okay.
budget document. No, give me
Okay.
that.
Do you know what the possible water bill will be by hooking up?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay,
I couldn't tell you because I don't have water. I have well in my own home, so I couldn't tell you.
so going back to how's the cost, are you just taking the 750 homes and dividing that, the total amount due by the 750?
Correct. And that's
So-
what they call an EAU. That the formula of how we arrive to the assessment is in the report, in the assessment report, and you can get a copy of that and read it. It'll tell you exactly how they came to the number.
So not everybody has the same EAU size, is that?
It's one EAU, and every property is one EAU with the exception of one parcel that's a duplex. So they get charged 2 EAUs.
Okay.
So 2 times the 358.97. And the
Okay.
more, that formula was based on 702 properties. And I can tell you, since we published that list, we've identified more properties. So the actual number, when we actually certify the tax roll that gets sent to the county, is going to be less than 358.97.
Okay, and so the properties in front of me can be split. So like I said, I think in the beginning, there's water right outside my property, literally 10 feet off my property line. That's where the developer who built the 4 big houses there now, last one, it went to my neighbors. So is my EAU going to be the same as if you have to run brand new pipe down the street of someone else's street?
It's the same for everybody. So if you don't have access to water, that is
Right.
going to be $358.97.
$5,550.
Correct.
Okay, so if I can tap into that for $1,000, you're going to charge me the same amount as you're charging someone who doesn't have pipes down the street?
Right now, we wouldn't issue any permits, and WASA, the Miami-Dade Water and Sewer, which were the ones that would permit future pipes. Right now, all of that, the village is on hold until the council makes this vote. And once this vote, if it were to go this way, there would be no additional private infrastructure construction. It would halt everything, and anything that's left to be built from an infrastructure standpoint would have to be done through this special assessment district.
So then, okay, that's interesting, because I didn't notice that. So again, going back, so the people of Pinecrest voted, I guess you said there was an amendment before, and I guess
A referendum, right?
referendum said that they didn't want to pay for it, but yet the people that are left paying for it are not going to be paid. They're all going to pay the same amount, but the work or deliverable, the individual properties are different costs, and
So
everybody has to pay the same amount.
So the vote that occurred in 2018 or 19 was the question was, would people be willing to tax themselves a
Right.
certain ad valorem amount to complete the infrastructure?
Right.
And that, had it passed, it was a question of not whether people wanted water or not. It was a question of whether they were willing to tax themselves, every property in Pinecrest, at a higher tax rate, and it failed. So what the special assessment concept is, it basically establishes a benefit structure that has identified that for every property, you get one, lateral connection. That lateral connection that allows you to access water is worth an EAU. That's the $358.97 right now.
Right, the $5,550.
So if there's a property that's like a duplex, right, that's zone duplex, that they have 2 EAUs, so
Right.
they would be doing that as double.
Okay.
Okay.
So just so we
It's
all
a flat
understand,
fee for Right, on an EAU basis.
Right, doesn't matter if they have to go 10 feet for me or 100 feet for a neighbor, we're all gonna bear the same cost.
Of that infrastructure, right, just split
Right.
amongst the number of properties that will participate as part of that assessment district.
Okay,
It'll be
then,
shared across everybody.
so my neighbor whose property can be split, are you gonna charge them twice?
If they are zoned where they are allowed to split it, they would be charged twice. If they are not zoned, if they're zoned as single family unit, they only get 1 meter. And in some point in the future, if they split their property, then that additional meter will, that assessment would then go to that, and they would have to get a lateral connection, but they won't get the lateral connection now. It won't be built with that lateral, with that second lateral connection, only have 1 lateral connection.
So I think I looked at the document and I didn't see the 2 properties in front of me getting hit at all.
You
And
would
they're
need
they're
to-
zone 2 huh?
You would need to get me the addresses and I check, because there's, it's not to say these, we have found properties that were missing in that initial list. So there'll be a new list that'll be published with this new agenda, because we did find some that didn't make that in error. And so we've been finding some. That's why the numbers are different now than what they were when you originally got the notices when the last meeting occurred.
Okay, good.
Okay.
One more, last question. That's it. Last one.
Okay, one last and we're done with you.
We're
and
done
then
with me.
move
Done
on.
with me. I'll be quiet. Thank you for your patience.
problem.
Are you gonna rebid the contract?
Not if we can help it. And I don't want to get too technical, but
Please be technical because I'm a technical guy.
okay, the reason, I'll be technical, but I don't want to bore everybody. The bid that we put out last June is good through this June. We know that obviously cost of construction has gone up significantly. Currently, cost of construction, I can tell you, is up like 70% from when it was last year at this time. In addition to that, because all of a sudden there's a windfall of money specifically for civil engineering type projects and infrastructure projects, it's likely that if we had to rebid this project, the cost will be going up at least by 3%, if not higher. Now, the unknown is whatever the federal government guidelines are for the use of this money, what those guidelines are. If those guidelines provide for things that we did not already put in that bid because we didn't even know this money was coming, and it forces our hand to rebid, then we have to start from scratch. And then we'll, be having to reissue a bid, do our math again and start all this process again. But right now we're trying to avail ourselves of the existing bid because we know that we're never going to get it cheaper than what we have it right now. So if we can move with that particular bid, that's the preference that the village.
Are you gonna use a modern bid? I mean, delivery, like some lump sum fee for the project or?
Yeah, it's basically, they give you scheduled values. It's based on linear footage of pipes and stuff. We already know based on the design that we have what that cost is. That's how we arrived to the $11.4 million bid price. And that bid is a public document. You can take a look at it. You'll see, it's all publicly available. It was competitively bid and it was a bid at that time. So we have a short window to move forward with that project. I can tell you if the contractor made it clear, if we don't move forward as of June 30th, and we wanted to continue with him, he would raise the price just off the bat by 3% to honor that same exact bid. So that's where we're at. Okay. All right. You're welcome. Vicky.
Madam Manager, before you go on, just a couple of things. I put on the chat the number of housing units, so that's on there. And I emailed you, I don't have the specific number of fire hydrants, but I emailed you a visual. It's a graphic of where the fire hydrants currently are. This was from the original master plan, water master plan, which is from 2008. So
is that on the, can we put that on the website and just ask Guido to put that?
Sure. I emailed it to you in case you want to share the screen and show it. I mean, it's just one general map. It's not very specific, but we can get those numbers.
Okay, or if you want, let me get you Paul's email, and then you can
It was actually Mr. Kyle that asked for it.
Oh, Lance, okay. Oh, I don't have Lance's number, email, I don't think. Well, if you can, we'll get that to him if he's still on the call. All right, Vicky, or Lance, if you can, if you're listening, if you can put on the chat your email, we'll get you that, the hydrant question map to you. Okay, Vicky, let's go. You're on mute, you're still on mute, so you have to unmute yourself. There you
Couple
go.
quick questions. You,
Okay.
this proposal, if we made the payments for 25 years is $8,969.75.
Right,
If we pay up front, it's $5,055,
$5,555.
$5,555. Okay.
And you'll get updated numbers like in a notice. It'll tell you, okay, this is what it's gonna be. So right now, like I said, these numbers are still in flux a little bit.
Once it's approved, this number you just gave me is good for how long?
Up until the time that we
Brown?
have to put the roll to the county, like we have to certify what they're gonna put on the tax roll. I
Okay.
think we have, that's why I was saying it will give people about a year to a year and a half, if we can, the most we can to get us that prepayment. And
Okay.
we'll send instructions via notice.
The 10 years to connect, which means once they bring the water down the street, you have 10 years to bring it into your house.
10 years to bring it to your house. So if you don't do it by the 10 years, then the county will at some point come in and send you, letters that basically tell you that you have 90 days to connect.
Okay.
The one thing that triggers having to connect sooner than that 10-year, by the way, is a sale of a home, or if you do any type of construction that is 50% or more of the area of the home, then it also triggers you having to connect as
Okay.
part of the permitting for that construction.
I'm curious, if you, let's say somebody decides to do the payments and they've made 3 or 4 payments and they go to sell their house, is there a lien on the property? The people that buy the house have to finish paying?
They
How do
have to finish
how do you
paying.
do that?
It's a special, it's not a lien. It's just an assessment.
Do at the closing?
It'll be part of the closing document, so the person will obviously understand that when they do their due diligence, that they're gonna have an assessment. Kind of like people that live in Devonwood, if you know that neighborhood, they have a special assessment, or even in Pinecrest by the Sea, they have a special assessment. So all the people that live in certain neighborhoods already have, some people have street light assessments and stuff and part of their tax bill.
Okay, one more question. This is just, I'm just curious. When Pinecrest was incorporated in 1996, is that when they had a budget to bring water to houses at the time and do the infrastructure at that time?
No, we never had a budget. The infrastructure, since we incorporated, we obviously knew that back then there was about 1,500 homes that didn't have water. And so efforts were made since back then to try to get the county to finish the infrastructure.
So the county did bring water to some of the houses.
The county provided a portion of the money through the general obligation bond, the countywide general obligation bond.
Right.
And they allocated a certain amount of money in that bond, which the village used for part of that water
How
infrastructure.
did the rest, where did the rest of the money come from?
It didn't. That's how come there's still 720 odd homes that don't have water.
Right. So technically, and I'm willing to, to pay for this. I want that water brought to, technically, everybody should be chipping in for this.
And that was the argument of a lot of
Yeah.
the people that were in favor, that the have-nots that were hoping that the haves would contribute towards it, but that kind of went in.
Yeah, I knew the referendum wouldn't go through, but it was worth a shot.
I know. Yeah,
But
right.
all
But
right,
that's
I'm
our goal.
done.
Our goal, so and I did say this earlier, we're gonna keep trying to get this paid 100% by other entities. And if, we're not gonna stop until we can't, until it's built, and then there's nothing else we can do. But we've got a good year to year and a half where we can really try to get, the feds or even the county to chip in and put some money into this. By the way, I forgot to mention, the county is putting in 500,000 towards this.
Okay.
500,000 out of the GOB monies. From the 2004, they were able to find another 500,000 that they threw in the mix. So we actually are, have 7 million from the village's coronavirus relief fund allocation, and then 500,000 from the county. And I know that Commissioner Regalado is working behind the scenes, so I don't know if they're gonna come up with more money or not, but
Okay, so the $5,555 is the discount if you pay up front.
right, because it
Okay.
doesn't charge you the interest, right?
Perfect. I gotta run. Thank you so much. I
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. All right. And if you have any other questions, you can email me and I'll answer anything that might come
Thank
up.
you.
Okay, anybody else on the call, you can raise your hand. Mike, do you have your hand or did you already have? Wait, you're on mute. Or you just have your hand still up because you're special like that. Okay. And Lance has his hand up too. I don't know if he still has questions.
There, did it unmute?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
you're off mute. You're
Uh,
good? Or you have
Yeah,
questions?
no, I've been waiting patiently.
Oh, okay, okay.
Like Paul, I've got, you know, my list. You know,
Okay,
but-
please no interrogations, Michael. I know that you like that.
The first thing I want to be clear on, and that is that everybody who has water in the village, whose water was supplied by the village or the county, isn't paying anything for their water, correct?
Except for the tax as part of the GOB bond.
Which all of us in the
All
village
of you guys
pay.
pay, yes.
So
correct.
we're paying for their water, but they don't want to pay for our water. Is that right?
It seems that way, yes.
Okay. And why don't we just float a general obligation bond? Not a special assessment. The referendum that went out was, would you add 0.026 to your tax bill to
Right,
pay for water? Forget that. Just like we bought the property over there at Palermo, just like the $8 million we're putting into Pinecrest Gardens that nobody's getting assessed for through a bond. Why don't we just issue a GO bond and pay for the balance?
yeah, that discussion has been had at the council level. And I think the heartburn that the elected officials have is the fact that this is not our infrastructure, that it's not the villages, it gets turned over to the county and then they make all the money off of it. And
But
because it's not something that we would own, they just have taken that position.
Okay.
Is there a reason that they couldn't do it? No, they could, but they've taken that, it's a political, it's a policy decision. They've made that it's not technically village infrastructure. And because it's not, then they're not willing to do that. They've thought about it. It's been discussed. I can tell you that much.
And if I'm not looking at you, my camera's here. And
It's
you're
okay. I don't get offended. I get it.
We're getting $8 million from the feds, but you keep saying it's only $7 million for the project. Where's the other $1 million going? And why isn't every cent, 100 cents on the dollar going into this project?
The council has committed to 7 million. Preliminary discussions have centered around waiting for what the Department of Treasury guidelines are going to be as far as the use of the funds, because I think what will likely happen is if we can reimburse ourselves for lost revenues, they would likely do that with the balance of the funds, and then anything that's left from that, the discussion behind the scenes has been that they would likely throw that into the water project as well. But they've set aside $1 million until further notice. So it's not off the table completely, but right now the numbers that you all are looking at as far as the immediate proposed special assessment is the way I've presented it so far.
What lost revenues, Josie?
It all depends. The village had lost revenues because of coronavirus, specifically as a result of like lost rental revenues at the parks and Pinecrest Gardens. So it all depends how the guidelines come back from the feds of, whether we can submit for reimbursement, and show that loss, that we can try to reimburse our coffers to that, whatever that tune may be. So it all depends how they come back with their guidelines on what we may or may not use that remaining $1 million worth for. So to be determined. So it's not to say that they wouldn't use the rest of it for water. I don't know the answer to that. you know,
personally think if we are paying for everybody else's water, then every cent of that should go to water. And if the
you're a speed dial with all these people. Let them know it is.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying it for the people on this call. I think every penny should go to the water. And if the village has lost revenue and they need to tax the whole village to make up that lost revenue, then let those people who got water throw in for the lost revenue.
Right. I hear you. And I think that you can totally have that conversation with your elected officials.
My understanding is there's going to be a modification to the existing fire hydrants. Is that correct? Or are the fire hydrants going exclusively into the areas that are getting water?
Exclusively to the areas that are getting water.
Okay.
This project, yeah, there was something where I don't know if it was the mayor or somebody on council may have misspoken and thought that we were going to be, that part of this project was going to be stuff that was going to happen to areas that already have water. That is not the case. This money and everything that we're going to be attributing to this construction project is only going to affect areas that have zero infrastructure right now. And nothing on the already existing areas that have water infrastructure.
Okay. Bear with me here 1 second.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to interrogate you.
That's okay. I don't mind that. You know, I'm used to it, Mike. Even though we haven't had breakfast in a while.
You guys are still trying to get money out of the county and other sources and potential additional federal funding so that this doesn't cost us.
We've applied for grants. We keep getting denied on the grants we've applied. They've tanked. So I think the best hope we have right now moving forward is either monies from the county out of their coronavirus relief fund allocation, or the feds. We've been asking the state for, I don't know, 15 years and haven't gotten a red cent from the state. So I don't hold my breath that we'll get potable water monies from the state. Their priority is more on the stormwater side of things.
Right.
But the county and the feds definitely, I think there's going to be opportunities that are still there that we haven't taken full advantage of yet.
Well, the mayor and I think Commissioner Regalado, the water was part of their campaign platforms too, if I recall correctly. Getting everybody. You had mentioned that one of the monitoring wells in Pinecrest had shown elevated nitrate levels. Which well was that?
It's the M3. Let me see. Let me ask.
It's not the one in my backyard.
No, your backyard is the Pinecrest Gardens one. That's the one.
Right, exactly. I got salt, but no nitrates.
Yeah, the nitrate one is. Let me see if I can. Nitrate one. I'm trying to find it. Sampling. Tell you in a minute. Let me just go through. Nitrate findings in MW330. So they're finding it at wells that are MW3 is kind of located. Here, I'll share the screen. So this is MW3 is up here. So it's off of 104th and close to, I guess, between 60th and 62nd.
Okay.
Is where they're finding.
North of 104, it looks like.
It's just south of 104. 104 is up here.
Okay.
So that's the one with the nitrate and at the 30. See how all these monitoring wells, they have 30 foot, 50 foot, and 70 foot.
Right.
So when you read the report, it'll tell you where their findings are. But I just read that the nitrate is at the 30 which is potable water.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
That
pretty
is
shallow.
potable water level.
Okay.
So they're finding nitrates in potable water level.
And just, Yossi, what's the red line is the village?
Yeah, that's our boundary.
Okay, and the black line is what?
The black line is what they describe as the approximate extent of chloride at 70 feet.
Got it,
So the yellow is where the contour is,
got
the
it,
approximate contour, and what they're anticipating is where the water the salt water is already intruding at the 70-foot depth.
got it. Yeah, I couldn't see the legend before the way you had it.
Yeah, that's fine.
All
So
right.
again, I'm gonna put this, we'll get that up on the website so you can look at it. So yes, on the 11th, there is a vote. That's the vote to approve or not approve the establishment of the assessment. Somebody wrote that in the chat.
And that'll all fluctuate. That assessment and whether we even need assessment is gonna fluctuate.
As new things, information comes in, right? It's meant to establish the maximum.
Okay.
So anything that comes in will obviously affect that in a positive way, hopefully.
All right. I'm like Vicky, I think between the nitrate and the saltwater intrusion, this is a must-do thing we've got to do. I just find it, and I don't think $300 or $350 a year is going to bust any of us, who live in the village.
Principle.
Maybe stuff on some older fixed income people, but for the most part, I don't think it's a problem. But I think it's, for me personally, it's a big principle issue.
I know.
If my money's going to pay for everybody else's, 800 plus properties, then I don't understand why the village doesn't have the cojones to just do a GO. And my last question for you is, we floated a bond for the improvements over at Pinecrest Gardens, is that correct?
Yes.
And that was about $8 million.
Well, that bond was not just for Pinecrest Gardens, but yes, part of the Pinecrest Gardens project was paid for out of that bond.
And that's a GO bond that everybody's paying.
It's not a GO, that was just a bank loan. It's not a bond, like, it's not a GO bond.
Oh,
General
okay.
obligation bonds typically require like the vote of the people and stuff. And we haven't done GOB bonds. We typically just do bank loans or what we call special revenue bonds.
All right, but okay, whether it's a bank loan or a GO, our tax dollars, everybody in the village is going to pay those back.
Correct.
Okay, it's coming out of the general revenue to the village.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, let me see how many.
Not too bad, huh?
No, it wasn't bad at all. All right, anybody else? Guillermo, I see you.
Yeah, hi, Josie, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing well, thanks. So I guess,
You're on the list, don't worry.
no, I know, yeah, you put me on the list. Now, my question to you is, so I was sitting there at my construction site today, and I was basically, everybody in my neighborhood is on a well,
Right,
except for, obviously, I'm, under the permit, because of the size of my project,
right.
I have to have that obligation with WASA.
Yeah, you're
Now-
you're what we fondly call the limbo houses.
Yeah.
You're in
that
limbo.
I haven't yet broken ground because,
Mhm.
to bring the water main from 72nd Avenue to 71st Avenue, it's $67,000.
Right,
Where you guys are going to charge me $5,000, give or take,
right,
through an assessment. Now, my question is, I have a well on site.
right.
That's a fairly deep well. There's no, I have nitrates, because I just had it tested. Now, my question is this: if I were to agree, and this is specific to me, not just in, so I understand, but if I were to agree to say, listen, Pinecrest, I will put in whatever filtration system I need, carbon filters, water softeners, etc., reverse osmosis systems, whatever, to make my well water potable,
Mhm,
while you bring the water to me.
mhm.
Is that something that I'll be able to do in order to get my CO?
That,
Because my fear is that the EQB board or Durham is going to say, let me get a test of your well water. Well,
right.
that's,
Well,
we all know.
I can tell you right now because they just told us, Guillermo, and that they want us to provide tests of the wells. I can tell you when we go before the EQCV board, I can tell you that if we don't provide the test for the wells,
Mhm.
doesn't mean they won't hear it, okay? But it may impact their decision, okay?
Gotcha.
In your case, I don't know that you want to do that, because in your case, you have contamination. So you're gonna be taking on that risk. Now, what I can tell you is if you're not living in your house right now and you're building a new property, like when are you planning on having this house finished? Because most houses in Pinecrest take at least a year and a half to complete, or are you almost at the end?
I am literally, they're closing up the walls right now. So I anticipate September, October.
Okay, so there's a slight possibility that depending on how the permitting happens at the county, that your section may end up starting construction.
Mhm.
May, have to wait 3 months to, I don't know what financially, you may want to wait or not.
Right.
Those kinds of questions are gonna be, like EQCB is gonna make that decision. They're gonna say to you, they may allow you to avail yourself of this opportunity, but a condition they may impose on you is that you cannot get your CO until you hook onto water. But COs and TOs are issued by the village, not by the county.
Okay.
So for people that have water issues, I venture to say, especially if you have a well that you can tap into, that we would potentially, and I can't guarantee this until we sort all this out with the EQCB, but that we would likely be willing to work with you on a TCO scenario, especially if it's
All
a
right.
short order. But every
Right.
case is going to be different, and until the EQCB hears your case, like I can't confirm any of
Now,
that.
let me ask you a question. I'm actually having the water tested right now, like from National Testing Laboratories. They're going to run 2 tests. They're going to run one, the well as is, and they're going to run one with the filtration system that they recommend for my property. Can I provide you that so you can show the EQCB board,
You can
right? Say,
show
listen, here's
both.
what the well is, but this is what it will be.
Correct.
You
If
know,
you think that that'll help your case, you can do that. The only issue is that we have to provide this information to them by Friday.
okay, by Friday. So I got a call tomorrow to get the testing back.
That's what they're asking for. David, right? That's the deadline. David, the Public Works Director, is on the call, so if he can jump on and let me know, but I believe that's what they're asking for. And Guillermo, you and I can talk about it tomorrow in more detail. I'll have David,
Okay.
with you, and we can sort it out, like the best scenario, like how you want to come at it. Because obviously we want to try to help you be successful in the EQCB. But if
Right.
we go in like as a class action, like with all the limbo homes that are in the middle, so for those of you that are listening, there's people that are in different levels of construction but haven't actually broken ground and built any infrastructure. And obviously it's the difference between paying $65,000 and $5,500 for water. So they all are hopeful to be able to participate, but it's ultimately the county's decision whether they'll let them jump off their agreements with Miami-Dade Water and Sewer or not. So, but we can come back and talk about it a little bit more, Guillermo, and strategize, you, me, and David.
Okay.
Talk tomorrow. Okay. Any other
Perfect.
Lance, did you have more questions? Or like anybody else before I go back to people that have already spoken, that haven't spoken and have questions? Jason, Sarah, Chris, Fiona, any of you have any questions? Raise your hands or just pop on the call. Sarah, you took yourself off mute. Did you have any questions?
Is there any chance that we can not buy into it until after we have done with our pond? I just spent $8,000 at our residence, maybe 10,000 to make sure we had new ponds, and we had no idea this was coming. And also, is there any reduction if you pay ahead? Can we get a percentage off?
Yeah, if you pay ahead, there is a savings there's a one-time payoff rate that lets you avail yourself of something that wouldn't have interest rates tacked onto it, and that one-time lump sum cost is about $5,555. What I will say, Sarah, and I mentioned earlier, because some of you have joined the call after that, was I would only avail myself of that option if you're planning on being in your house for the 25 years. Because if you're only planning on being there and then selling your house in 10, you're obviously going to pay a lot less if you pay the $350 odd a year. You know
Yes,
what I'm saying?
but it's not very appealing to sell your house in Pinecrest, our beautiful neighborhood we've lived in for 35 years. It's not very appealing to say, only have this little funky charge for the next 20 years. That's not too appealing to.
I see your point, but yeah, yes, that's true. But just wanted to mention that to you. As far as the connection, you don't have to connect for 10 years.
Oh, really?
Right.
So I can keep where I just spent 14 grand. I can keep that for now, even if I don't connect for now. And
For
it's
10 years, you have 10 years, and you may get longer depending on what happens with the county commissioner. I mentioned earlier, Commissioner Regalado is trying to get a variance that would give people 20 years. But we have,
I want to tell you, Yossi, you are very beautifully answering these questions, and I'm very proud of you. I thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Does anybody else that hasn't spoken already have any questions? Otherwise, I'm going to double back to Paul and then Lance, who have their hands raised. All right. Paul, did you have another question?
I do. Okay, so on May 11th, is that the vote for yay or nay for the project, or is that a open to the talk to the council members to say, hey, we want it or we don't want it?
It's both. So the vote and the discussion on May 11th will be whether or not to proceed with the implementation of the special taxing district. And inherent with that decision is the use of $7 million worth of the coronavirus relief funds towards the project. That's how we got to the formula that we have right now.
Okay, and so it's not going to be able, you're not going to be able to say something where, you know, we're going to do a bond. So that bond is off the table, right? Or the bank loan. We're not even going to consider that again, right?
The bank, no, in order to do this, the assessment will go towards a bank loan to do the project. So the balance, so the whole project is $11.4 million. We're going to throw in $7 million from the coronavirus relief fund, $500,000 from the county GOB bond. The balance, which is 3.9, is put out in a bank loan to pay for the construction. We build it, and once it's built,
that part, but the question was the amount that's being special assessed, that's not going to be negotiated. That's done. So the vote on Monday, it's either all of it or nothing. There's no more, hey, you know what? I think it should be an all Pinecrest bill.
no, it's all or nothing,
And
right?
so how many of the council members are on this call?
There are no council members on this call.
They don't want to know what we're talking about.
Well, the town, this is a town hall. It's meant to be information.
They want to hear us.
Of
Stop
course.
it.
They don't want to know how we feel. So.
Yes,
and
I
so
do.
Wait, time out.
It's recorded. Stop it, Paul. It's recorded.
Time out.
No.
Sarah, go ahead and put yourself on mute so that everybody kind of can hear what I'm going to say.
So.
The public hearing, which is when people can get up and speak and give their, 2 cents worth an opinion on whatever they're voting on, is going to actually happen on Tuesday. So that's when, people can either send support letters, opposition letters, comments in writing. They can do it in person. They can come in person. They can do it virtually like this through a mechanism that they have with Zoom. And that's when they'll take all public comments. Anything that's been submitted between, for the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks since people got notices in writing, all that will be made part of the record. And then after they hear public comment, they'll deliberate and vote. And that's it.
Thank you very much.
And then in June, they'll be awarding, presumably, if everything goes in this order, the contract with that vendor. Okay. All right. Alex, I haven't heard from you. Did you have questions? You work for the county. What do you know everything?
I'm just here as a citizen. So yeah, just the first one's an observation, then a question. The observation is that this is an incredible opportunity after 20 years. I don't think we're ever going to get as much free money. And you're absolutely right. I agree with you on the price changing with the cost of construction soaring. And it is a safety water issue, as it's been noted. It doesn't need to be said again. I think the council has listened to this over and over and over again. I know I've been at countless meetings. I think the question, and I don't need an answer now, maybe on the next information meeting, Mrs. Manager, can be clarified. I don't know that other than the GOB that provided the backbone infrastructure to, and some people got water, and the backbone should be shared by everyone because it's for everyone's benefit, whether you get it or not. But other than some homes that may have been connected during that time frame, I think there was a few. I don't know that there was many. There was a few. We don't pay for other people's water. People that got water paid for their own water through when they bought their house because it was already there, and through their fees. Or am I incorrect on that?
What I had mentioned earlier before you got on the call is historically, what we know of Pinecrest is there was a big swath of area that was built by the county when there was that big contamination at Sunnyland
Yes.
in 91 or 92. I couldn't tell you the exact number of homes that affected, but they did come in and build that infrastructure to deal with contaminated water. Then we had the GOB funding that came through the county that built enough homes. I think it was about 750 homes back then, or 750 homes that got water back then. And the balance is what we're dealing with now, which is another 720 something homes. It's still fluctuating a little bit.
Right. Like the contamination in Continental Park, where the state came in and paid for it. For a while, though, I had a friend that lived in Continental Park, and for a good few months, half a year, his home was worth absolutely nothing because he couldn't even touch his water. He couldn't even bathe in it.
Same thing happened in the falls. Like if you have total contamination of a huge area, the state will come in and the county will come in and fix it at no cost. But you have to almost wait for doomsday to happen, and then they'll come and do it. And then it could take X amount of time. And then you're basically getting water with, water trucks, basically.
Right,
So,
exactly.
Right.
Yep. So that was my only question, but no, thank you. And my wife was listening, and she says you have the patience of Job.
Oh, that's fine. I'm used to, I love my people. I know most of them personally, so it's good.
Great meeting.
All right. Thanks, Alex. All right. Lance, did you have any questions? I'm just doubling back on people that have their hands up.
Yes. You were mentioning earlier, and I'm not going to do the intonation correct on Raquel's last name, Commissioner Regalado.
Right.
I'm going to anglicize it. You're saying that she's going to be going for a variance or exemption, if you will, for the special assessment crowd. What about the Durham letter crowd?
It's everything. He's looking
everything.
At everything.
And it could be anywhere between 10 to 20 years. Right.
Right now, everybody had, the people that already obviously have water had 10 years from the time that project occurred. This set of people their clock starts when we build it. That's the 10 years. Now she's trying to get an additional 10 years. So it'll be a total 20 for the people that are just getting water if we move forward with this project, or an additional 10 years for the people that already have water.
So she has to sell this to the EQCB, or does she have to sell this to her fellow commissioners?
Fellow commissioners. And so
okay.
We'll be talking about it we have her on the agenda to come in. Last we heard, she was gonna come before the council to discuss this. So if all goes according to that, she's been put on the agenda. So if it doesn't happen at this meeting, I know that she's working on it. And, if she can make it happen, I think she understands. She's getting a lot of calls from people that are affected, that already have water, that are getting the letters. It just timing. It's like Murphy's Law. The county set these letters to the people that already had water, and it's just confused this whole thing with the water assessment, is one thing has nothing to do with the other. But if she can help those people, I think that's her intent. So hopefully she can make it happen.
All right, that was my only question. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Mike, you have another question, or Lance, can you turn and take your hand down since you don't have any more questions, just so I know who?
Yeah, I don't know why it's stuck in the up position.
Okay, so I won't call on you
Yeah,
again.
you can disregard it.
All right, Mike, any other questions?
I got a couple of quick questions.
Okay,
I wasn't aware of the limbo houses. How many limbo houses are there?
there's about 20, I'll tell you right now. Limbo houses we have, some of which have already been included and have said. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 total limbo houses. And then today we found another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 21. 38 homes that technically have access to water. They're corner lots and they technically have access to water on one side of their property, but don't have a meter. They don't have the lateral connection. And so we're gonna send those people notices to see if they want to join the special assessment district, in which case we would, when, you know, we have to complete the infrastructure anyway, because you have to close the loops, but we would add that lateral connection for them. And that would increase the number of homes that are part of the special assessment and lower costs further for everybody.
Okay, and
There's about 40 homes like that that we've identified that we still have to send letters to. They would be amended into the assessment. So they're not going to be in the initial tax roll that's going to be discussed at this particular meeting. They'll get a future date where they can come back and tell us, yes, I want to be part of the special assessment, and then they'll be added at a future date, at which point that would also lower cost for everybody.
and the 16 limbo homes, are those in the 723 already, or they're not in the 723 already?
The 16 limbo homes, okay, hold on, let me look, because I'm still, we're playing with a lot of different notice numbers and whatever. So 1, give me a second, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12 of those 16 are already on the list that will be approved by the council, which right now is at 697. Then there's an additional 24 homes that we have to notice again, because either we sent the notice to a prior owner and we got notice that they weren't the current owner, or they were sent notices, you know, when you get the return receipt, the return envelope. So we have to give them 20 days notice according to law. So we have to renotice those people again. So when it's all said and done, if not including the corner properties, which are going to have an option whether they want to participate or not, but it looks like we're going to have about 724 parcels total that are going to be part of the special assessment. The initial grouping that's going to be approved on May 11th is going to be about 695, unless I get communications from some of the people that we haven't been able to reach yet. And if they come to that meeting, they can be added on the spot. So we're trying to reach out to those people between now and then.
All right, so just so I'm clear, the $359 a year,
Mhm.
okay, is based on the 697 homes that you have for.
It was based on 702 and we're looking at 724 when all this is said and done, and maybe 40 more on top of that, or a portion of
Every
that.
house that gets added brings down the number incrementally.
Correct.
And the vote on Tuesday that sets the 359 sets the ceiling, and that number can come down depending on various things that may happen, additional funding sources.
Right.
And so forth.
And as long as it's going down, it doesn't need to come back for a vote.
Right,
So,
that's what I'm saying. So that sets the ceiling.
right,
That ceiling is set on 703. You guys are comfortable with that number, and the number will only come down from there depending on what happens.
right. And the only thing that could potentially change all of this and erase everything we're talking about is if we have to rebid this whole project. If
Of the
something
30
happens,
30 deadline.
right. If we have to rebid everything because something happens with these guidelines from the Treasury Department that they haven't put out yet, some kind of craziness happens that we can't use this current bid, then we ought to start everything again, do a bid, and, reprice everything out, And based on my conversations, you would likely see about a 3% increase to that assessment.
Okay, fair enough. And Guillermo, I was only kidding about making you bring your pipe down and saving us all 100 grand.
No worries, Mike. I'm gonna steal the water from your well.
Okay. Hey, mine's still clean. Come on down.
Oh, well, no. So Yossi, I did have a question on that issue. Like, and I think part of the argument that you guys gotta, I mean, I'm putting my lawyer hat on here, but I think part of the argument that the village has to make for its constituents and its residents is it's patently unfair to make people like me and similarly situated the way my family is, when, for instance, you're going to bring this water, and my neighbor who has the exact same water sources as I have in my well doesn't have to spend the money that I would have to spend because they are grandfathered in, because they've lived there. The mere fact that I'm building a newer, better, home in the neighborhood, I'm now obligated to go and spend this money, but my neighbor can wait 10 years and still use the water source that technically is the same water source I have, but I can't use because it has contaminants.
Right. I hear
You know,
you. Yeah, I
and-
mentioned I had a case of a guy who who built a house, hasn't even put the meter in yet, and they haven't even drawn water, but they spent $100,000, and we can't include them in the special tax.
Right,
account.
they opened up the floor, the ground.
They already opened the ground, right?
Right, so that's I'm trying to avoid the whole MOT issues and stuff like that, so I can piggyback on you guys.
Right.
Now, worst case scenario, because now you just threw a monkey in the wrench. We're saying, God forbid, something goes awry, and
We're going forward. We're going forward. If the council goes forward with this project, which I have every expectation that they will,
Mhm.
the delay to have to rebid and all that stuff is not going to add more than 6 months. That would be worst case scenario.
Right, but that's where 6 months
For
to
you,
me
that means a lot.
no, 6 months to me is a deal breaker, and I just at that point I would put my own water in. Now my question is, if I have to put my own water in, will I be removed from the 760 homes? Because I'm not going to be paying a special assessment
Yes,
when I have to.
you and everybody that's adjacent to you.
Right, whoever tags onto my
They don't even have to tack on, the ones that would be abutting your
my property, right? The line that I bring.
right.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah. And at that point, what I would suggest is that you talk to your neighbors to see if they want to pay for the lateral connections, because it'll be cheaper for them to do that while you have the street open than trying to tap into a live line later on,
Right.
years from now. Okay, it looks like everybody, I have answered every question. We're just shy, Harry? Do you have a question? If you do, you need to take yourself off mute. I can't hear you. There you go.
Okay, I have a few questions I want to ask you. I'll try to keep it simple.
Okay.
I noticed that in today's meeting, there's about 15 people present.
Mhm.
About 5 are government representatives, one way or the other. So we got
Right.
about 10 citizens here. Just as an observation, we're talking about $11.5 million to be spent, and all we have is 10 people here. It just, it's just an observation. I'm not going to make any further comment on it. It's just, the turnout isn't what you would call huge by any stretch.
Right.
Here's the key thing. the American Rescue Plan, those funds have been fully committed, and are they coming, and do you know when?
Yes, they're fully committed, and they're coming within the next 60 days.
So they may come after you've already committed for the construction.
Yes,
Because you say so in other words, you're going to make a commitment first with the contractor. And if the funds come in after that, fine. And if they don't, for some reason, you're committed to the contractor.
correct, yes.
So you're making the commitment first to the contractor.
We have to if we want to avail ourselves of.
And you're talking about how much money to save. In the event the contractor, since he was the lowest bidder, number one, the
Right.
bid was made a year ago.
Right.
The contractor may look at the environment and say, you know, that bid, I don't know if I could perform at that same level today, since, as you say, costs have gone up 70%.
He already told us if we go beyond the June 30th date, he will raise the price by 3%. He's already told us that. If we
He will
want to
raise the-
avail
he will-
ourselves,
He will raise the price,
he will raise the price. He's already advised us of that.
but he will honor the price that he made a year ago.
Plus 3%.
Oh, plus 3%.
Yeah, he's not going to honor it if we go beyond the 1 year mark.
Oh, so he's going to honor the bid plus 3% if you accept his bid now.
No. If I accept this bid now, before the June 30th date, he will honor his bid, the low bid. that
Okay.
he bid a year ago.
And if you don't accept it, that's when he'll add on 3%.
If we go beyond that June 30th date, cutoff date, then he will provide us an increase of 3% because we went beyond that 1 year hold, guarantee, price guarantee
So
timeframe.
is that the motivation to rush this thing to be approved as quickly as possible?
Yes, that's part of the reason that we are moving this as quickly as possible. It's because of that grant, and rather the bid, that contract.
The other question I want to ask you is this. The first group that received funds in 2007, about $5.5 million from the county, approximately. That first group consisted of about 750, say between 700 and 750 residences.
Right,
Do you know how many of those that have had 10 years to connect have
right.
chosen not to connect?
I couldn't tell you, but there's a large amount of people that have not connected.
I happen to have looked at the numbers. Let me just share them with you, if I may. And it's on, I got it off of your site, the village site. It turns out that of all the people that received access to water, the lines went in, but they chose not to connect.
Right,
10 years to connect. And of that amount, 76.4% chose not to connect. Now, I ask you, if you have water available to people and you have citizens clamoring for this water, why are they not connecting? Why is big bucks, big money being spent to provide access to water when the citizens don't want it anyway, and they haven't connected? They've turned their back on the water, but the money's been spent for the water lines.
right. I can tell you, I can't speak to those people back then. I can tell you based on what I've seen from this particular group, just anecdotally, and it'll be part of the record. We've received over 100 support letters from people in the affected areas in this particular group. I think, potential, I don't know what the answers are, why those people haven't connected. In some cases, I can tell you people have bought houses. There's been movement in housing stock, and in some cases, people didn't even know they had water available to them. And they come and find out after the fact because they were never even told. So there's all kinds of weird reasons why people haven't connected. But I can tell you, we'll never get it cheaper than this, because when, this money is coming from the feds, it can't be used for too many different purposes. And, my personal opinion on it is it would be, a failure to not avail ourselves of that huge opportunity, a huge chunk of money that has a very limited use for it.
Yes, there's no question when there's money available. I mean, why not take advantage of it? And I understand the position. The problem is that there is an opportunity to poll those people and just simply ask them, if I give you water, will you accept it? I don't think that that's an unreasonable request. And especially if you're talking about currently about 1,300 residents that still are not connected for one reason or the other. Yes, there are a group that are demanding this. They want this. They are very excited about this opportunity. But the question really is that I'd like to ask is, how many are there? Can it be divided up? There's a reason why certain people are saying thanks, but no thanks. Then there's another group that says, I want this. This is a golden opportunity. Give it to me and give it to me now. But the problem is, I don't know, and I think a lot of citizens in the community, because we do have 20,000 people here, hardly anybody, including yourself and the mayor, know who really wants this water. And I just want to mention one thing, because we talked about anecdotal evidence. I talked to my neighbors and I asked them, I happen to be on county water. My neighbors are on county water. I asked the question, how many of you guys drink the county water, consume it as potable water? And nobody does. Everybody brings in water, even though they have access to it. I myself drink bottled water. My next door neighbor drinks bottled water. The one down the street drinks bottled water. Some of us went to Publix to say, how much water do you sell in Publix and Milan's Dairy for the citizens in Pinecrest? They say, oh my God, it's 5 truckloads a day. This is the kind of, there are more people that purchase bottled water in Pinecrest, according to the Publix in Dayland, than any other store in the entire county. And they say, and most of us, 90% of us have access to potable water, yet most of us don't consume it. So you have people that are on well water that don't drink it either. They may bathe in it, they may swim in it, they may wash their cars, but they don't drink it. And so the question is this: are we solving a problem? Now I know this is not maybe not a fair question to ask, but are we solving a problem or perhaps creating a different type of problem? And I just simply ask, why is there not a survey? There's only 1,300 people
I'm going to tell you
involved.
the answer why at this
Yes.
at this juncture. I can tell you the answer why. Number one, let's say that you make the argument people don't want potable water, and the majority of people don't want potable water. Okay, they don't have fire protection. Hydrants is $350 too much to pay to get as fire insurance. The ability that if you have a fire that pops up, that you can immediately hook up and put a fire out. It's all a matter of what people's priorities are. We know for a fact that the wells are contaminated. We, the public officials that look at the testing, we know that there's an impending problem that could happen overnight with the quality of the potable water in these wells. So if there's an opportunity to address an infrastructure need, it doesn't, whether or not people want to immediately connect to it or not is not as pressing as the ability that they would have safe potable water available should those things happen and go awry that we can't really predict accurately. So I don't think, while I understand your perspective, there definitely are a group of people that are not interested in connecting and don't want to connect. And I think that those people, we need to tap into that group to really help the commissioner's efforts at the county to get that further extension of time that would allow like 20 years to connect, you know, which in essence lets anybody that wants to ride that out and see what happened a lot more time. And I think we try to coordinate that effort, but I think this is my personal opinion. I happen to agree with you know, the council's overall intent, which is, you know, let's solve the infrastructure, the lack of infrastructure issue in the village. It really only affects, out of 6,000 single family homes that are in Pinecrest, 700 and roughly 25 that are left to finish the infrastructure.
The second half.
There's only 725 out of 6,000 single family homes in Pinecrest that don't have access to potable water through the county's infrastructure.
Yes.
Regardless of they've connected or not, the fact that they have that ability and that they can connect on a whim if they needed to. And so you know, this funding is available. It's a one-time shot. This was something we didn't expect was going to happen. Quite frankly, I never thought I would see the day to, you know, that we would get a huge chunk of money like this from the feds that practically pays for this project for all intents and purposes. So, you know, with that, I think, I don't know if there's no more questions. I'm going to just try to
Just
wrap
one,
this
more-
up.
just one more thing
Okay.
regarding, see, each issue that we discuss right now, and I may appear to be taking a position on this thing, but I'm just trying to get to the bottom line. I'm also looking at this from a financial standpoint. So when we use anecdotal evidence, when there's the opportunity to use professional consultant reports,
Right.
anecdotal evidence includes the fire hydrants. We don't have a report in the village that I'm aware of that says, here's where we're short and here's how much we need. I've looked at political statements where it's a huge number, then it's an in-between number, then
I
it's a
can answer
lesser
that
number.
question. It's 191 fire hydrants that this project will include. New.
What happened to the 88?
What do you mean, what happened to the 88?
Last meeting, you mentioned it was 88 that was needed.
I misspoke. The
Oh.
plans show 191 fire hydrants that will be included in the construction project that don't exist today.
Okay, well, let me just sign off by just saying this. I just want to mention one point, and that is, it would be great if all of the citizens in Pinecrest could have access to consultant type reports, not anecdotal evidence, nor political, nor even administration reports, because there tends to be possibly some sort of bias that might be in there. But if we could get professional reports, perhaps we can offer some suggestions to get this thing done effectively and efficiently at the lowest possible cost, not just throw money out there because it's thrown in our lap. That's all I want to say.
I understand. I
Thank you.
did mention earlier, in case you didn't catch it, we will be posting the well monitoring reports, the study on those wells that show the contamination. That should be up tonight, if not by tomorrow. So that'll be up. And same thing, the bid documents, all that is all public record. Anybody that wants to look at those, they can. It was obviously competitively bid last June, and we have not just the low bidder, but everything else that was submitted as a result of that bid. Okay, Alex, did you have any last parting questions?
Very, very quick. Yes, I think just the opportunity to the last comments, and just to clarify, I think as a not having water, to those that do have water, providing first world infrastructure ahead of the need when this opportunity is available is critical. The fact that we don't have first world infrastructure, is kind of crazy. Nobody's fault, just kind of crazy. And there's an opportunity to remedy that now. And that's not anecdotal. Yes, the anecdotal information and the data would be great, but the fact that you can put the infrastructure in now is beyond reproach. That's just a need that's needed. It's very simple. And I think the other one, it's not just about drinking water. I hate to close with this, but it's also about being able to flush a toilet. The fact that you can't flush a toilet when there's no electricity, you get one flush and that's it. And the fact that, we don't know what we're showering in is kind of concerning as well. So I think those are just points that, the fact that this is now can be remedied, whether people are going to tie in now or later, eventually somebody's going to tie in, and the opportunity to put it in now is going to be a lot cheaper than the opportunity to put it in the future. That's it. And I think it's again, just to restate, great meeting. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? If not, we're gonna close up. Yes, Ms. Ball.
No, just, I think you guys have done an amazing job with all the documents. The village has certainly done a gazillion surveys, and they're all available to see. Inspire Pinecrest gave you a lot of information. All those surveys that I remember that didn't even have water on it, where they have additional comments. The one that was always listed the most was about water. So I think you've got tremendous documentation and data on that. So I thank you for doing all that. I thank you for putting it all on the website, and just, little tiny corrections, as we say, we sometimes we misspeak, that the GOB money and the state money that we got, that funded the projects for 2002 and 2011, it really only did 562 properties.
Total. Okay, because
That
the
was-
rest, you're absolutely right. The rest was done through private development.
Yeah, the rest was done for private development. I mean, it was hundreds of homes that didn't directly pay from the whole dry cleaner thing.
Right.
That's not anecdotal. Unfortunately, the county can't get it, but you can look at a map and see.
I can tell you unequivocally, for those of you that care to know, that the county's maps are not even accurate, which is why we're still finding properties that don't have water, that we thought had water, but don't have water. It's insane how some of the stuff, and Alex, don't take offense to it, but the county, I don't know, sometimes I wonder how they do things over there. I just want to do a shout out to Jason Timmons. I saw that you're on the call. Hi. And there was a couple of other people that haven't spoken. I hope I've answered all your questions, but if you're welcome, Fiona and Terry, whatever you all, if you have any questions, you can follow up with emails to that email where you wrote to get the links with any follow-up questions. I'll respond to everything, or you can write me directly. And if you want to write any letters of support or opposition, whatever, ahead of that meeting, you feel free to do so. You can submit those. Those will all be made available to the council for the record. And again, you can go to that meeting either virtually or in person. And either way, the council, will be able to hear your opinion on it. Okay, Michael?
Quick question on the participation. This may be a Guido question. On the participation via Zoom in a meeting, do you have to sign up for that ahead of time?
You have to sign up ahead of time. I could tell you right now, the instructions are all online and in that email that I sent everybody. So you have to let him know that you want to appear virtually by Monday, 4:30. And then he'll send you a link to be able to go on a weight room, and you sit in that weight room, and then he'll call and let you into the meeting one at a time to address the council. That's how those council meetings work.
Thank you very much. And Yossi, thank you very much for taking the time to set this meeting up and give us all this information.
My pleasure. Harry, you had a follow-up question?
Yes, just one quick question. Will some funds be spent to try to connect the sewer line to Pinecrest Gardens? Because there's a lot of construction going on now. It will eventually be complete, and a large population will probably be attending functions at Pinecrest Gardens. There's anticipation of a huge success there.
It's been pitched to council that part of the money, that $1 million, be used for sanitary sewers. I think the rough estimate to bring a sanitary sewer, the last time I checked, was about $350,000. And it was brought up to council, but council has not decided what it will use that extra $1 million that it's set aside. So it's a possibility, but they haven't made that decision yet.
And couldn't that be connected right into the Fort Phillies property, goes into Coral Gables?
Correct. That's the nearest sanitary sewer line is near Fort Phillies Farm.
It would be a wise investment.
I in fact recommended that to the council, but they have not made a final decision on what they want to use that extra $1 million that they've set aside for. But that was one of my recommendations, was that it be used for that purpose.
Okay.
Okay. Any other lingering questions? If not, thank you all. It was good catching up. Good to see you, Mike. I'm glad you haven't called me in a while. Jason, bye. Chris, Terry, whatever you need, call me. Lance, take care. Bye, Alex. Everybody, take care.